Good morning. My name is Melinda, and I'm here with my weekly wrap-up. And before we get going, t-shirt check. Yes, we're in March. Well, when you see this, it'll be March, which means it's March on the Moors. I'm so excited. Little sneak preview. I'm going to have an original tag up on a Bronte themed original tag up on Tuesday. So be sure to check on that. If you want to join the Voxer group for Agnes Grey, please let me know, because that starts, well, today if you see it, but you can catch up. Like if you see this down the road and you want to join us, it's easy to catch up because it's got a very slow schedule for that, just to fit it over the month. I know I was just commenting on Michelle's video and March is really crowded. And I really struggled trying to find a month to do my Bronte reading event, and I decided for March because topically, it seemed the most open, if that makes sense. Like, obviously, I don't want to do it during July because it's Jane Austen July. October is still kind of sort of that thing. And I was originally thinking Febronterary, but I know there's Febregency. So topically, March made the most sense. So anyway, it's going to be a fun month. And I had a fantastic reading week. Before I get into my books, I just want to let you know, I'm so far behind in videos. The way I do my videos, it's very complicated. I won't go into it, but basically I'm about a week behind seeing videos. So just so you know, if you see comments from me showing up on videos that are a week old, that's why. I'm working on it. I really am. Problem is, I can't read and watch Booktube at the same time. So, and I had a great reading week this week. So let's get into it. I finished 7 books this week. Couple of them super short. So the first one I finished, I'm not going to talk too much about because I did a whole video on it. And that is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. That was my Shakespeare play for this month. I will talk about the video though at like 8 o'clock, because I do my Shakespeare videos on Wednesdays. I mean, they go up on Wednesdays. But at like 8 o'clock on Tuesday, I remembered I had not done anything with this. So I did the most frantic video ever. And if you watch that video, you can tell. It's like, oh my God, I just need to get this out there. Because I had thoughts, but I did generally like this one. But you can watch that video. Even if you aren't interested in Shakespeare, it's kind of a hot mess video. And those are always kind of fun to watch. Okay. The next book I finished was a buddy read I did with Bookish Best Friend, and that is The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. So I've told this story before, but I will tell it again. Why I even own this book. So every year I will participate in a YOLO Book of Flood book exchange with like a Secret Santa thing. And so, and it's run through the app Elfster. So I don't know the people that I'm doing this with. I just get a name and they have a wish list. And Bookish Best Friend and I had planned a book shopping day in downtown Portland. And so I was going to buy the books for this person. And we were going to go to 2 bookstores. We were going to and the first one, which was really the reason why we were going, was Grand Gesture Books in downtown Portland, which is a new romance-themed bookshop. And it's independently owned. The owner is a Black woman, and she's really active on social media. She's really fun to watch. She used to be the buyer for romance novels at Powell's. Second bookstore we went to was Powell's. I did a little vlog of that, and I'll put that down below if you want to see it. Anyway, we were in Grand Gesture Books, and we're looking around, and then I saw this book, and I'm like, oh, that's one of the books on my Yoga Book of Fun partners wish list. So I got it, and I went to pay for it with the other books that I had. And the the shop girl, which I think is probably a derogatory term, but it's so cute, shop girl, was telling me that this was her all-time favorite book. She loved it so much. Like, she read it and then she just turned back over when she finished and read it again. And then she read the back because she just couldn't bear to put it down. And she wanted to do a shelf talker, but there were so many shelf talkers, and she wanted to make sure her shelf talker like stood out. And she just wants everybody to read this book. And she went on and on and on and on. And I did not have the heart to tell her that I was not buying this book for myself. I just went, So anyway, purchased the book. I step aside. Bookish Best Friend steps up to buy her books. Pull up the Elfster app, and it's the wrong book. And I thought, okay, I can do one of two things. One, I can just turn around, say, I'm sorry, and return the book, in which case I'm pretty sure the shop girl's gonna like melt into a puddle of tears and have a nervous breakdown, and I will just ruin her life. Or I could just suck it up and buy the book. I'm not a monster. I sucked it up and bought the book. And then I told Bookish Best Friend, and she laughed and laughed at me. And then a couple of weeks later, she's like, oh, let's buddy read it. So we buddy read it. And this is an interesting book because it is a genre mashup, sort of. So it's like science fiction, because it's like time travel and a little bit dystopian. There's also romance. It's definitely marketed as romance. I'll say it's marketed as romance. I enjoyed this book. I'll just put that out there like that. I think the writer on a sentence level is very good, and I will definitely read more from her. Talking about Bookish Best Friend, I would say if you are a big romance reader or a big science fiction reader, you probably won't like this book, because for either of those, it doesn't really hit right. It's time travel, and I don't know. The whole time travel element, there were some things about it that didn't quite work for me. Like, it just logistically didn't work for me. Like, I'm like, but how does that happen? What's going on there? So there's just that. And I think, I don't know, I'm not a huge science fiction reader, but I kind of have the feeling that that is the sort of thing that would irritate some people. And I know that Bookish Best Friend reads more science fiction than I do. And she's in a club that they do science fiction and fantasy. And she said it was not a well-liked book, mostly for those reasons among the science fiction fans. So there's that. And as for the romance, it's not a romance. Like, just put it out here. This is not a romance novel. I'm not saying there isn't a love story. I'm saying it's not a romance novel. There are things that romance novels are, and this is not that thing. So there's that. Second of all, the romance, the love element. My husband just came down, so you're going to hear breakfast making. The love story element develops pretty late in the book. So if you're reading it for a romance point of view, it's gonna be a while before you get to that. And then third is, how should I put this? I'm not, like, there's this term that people use, chemistry between characters. And I always find that's a little hard on books to kind of define, but I really felt it here. Like, there was chemistry between the main character and another character. Problem was, it wasn't the character with whom the love story happened. I really wanted her to have a relationship with another character in this book because they just work so much better. So there you go. As I said, if you are not a serious romance reader or not a serious science fiction reader, you would probably like this book. It may not be a perfect book for you, but you'd probably like it. I would just say if you're hardcore into either of those genres, you might want to skip this one. So there's that. Then I have a debut novel that I came across. I don't even remember where I found out about this book. I, at some point, put it on hold at the library, and that came in, and I didn't mark how I heard about it, but it's called Grown Women by Sarai Johnson. So this is, I would say it's a historical novel, but it's like near history. There are references to things that happened in history, but it's not super historical in that way. There's this thing that has happened that I think has made some books, has made some books a little bit more historical, or has made them time capsule books. So this is the story of 3 generations. Is that right? 3, 4, how you can, 3 or 4 generations. There's 4. There's 4 women involved, of African-American women, mother-daughter sort of thing. So this is really big on the mother-daughter relationship. The book very clearly takes place pre-2016, and we all know what happened in 2016, okay? And so that's why I really kind of would put this as historical. It does give us dates, like it does say these happen in certain years, and there are references to things like 9/11. But the history part of it isn't super, that part of the history isn't super involved in the story itself. But I think that the story could only be told in a pre-2016 setting, if that makes any sense. Anyway, story is, let me see if I get the name. You first meet Charlotte in the 70s. She is like 17 years old. She's not yet graduated from high school, but she's run away from home. And she's run away to Tennessee, somewhere near Nashville, but not Nashville. The town is called Chili Springs, which I think is such a great name. Anyway, she's pregnant and she has plans to like have the baby, give it up for adoption, and go on with her life, right? And baby's born, she decides not to give it up for adoption. That is Karina. I think it's Karina. And then we start following Karina. Karina then has a child. There's never a question of her giving this child up for adoption. She wants this child. That child is Camille. But then we also circle back to Charlotte's mother, Evelyn, because something happened between them. So this is a very mother-daughter issue book. And if you like that, you're going to love this book. And I just put that there because I know that's not something that either someone's not interested in, or they themselves have so many issues in that area that this could be uncomfortable to read, if that makes any sense. So I would say just know thyself. That's what this book is. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really incredibly well written. There were a couple things that was like, I would say it's a debut novel. I would say there were a couple little debut mistakes in it. So not completely perfect, but pretty darn close. Wonderful writing, really good characters. I was really into it. I think the relationships were done very, very well and very, very realistically. And I would definitely recommend this if you're looking for maybe a next big author. As far as, a comp for the author, I also read, and I'll get to it, I read Tayari Jones, kind of that, but I would say more like Britt Bennett if you're looking for an author like that. But I would definitely put this on your radar if you're interested in that sort of book and you really want to sort of get in on the ground floor with a new author, because I think we're going to see a lot from Sarai Johnson. That was really good. Then I've been reading this book for a long time. Spillover by David Quammen. Animal Infections and the Next Human Pandemic, and this is part of the Book Naturalist Book Club. So this was an experience. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. First thing, this book, which is about diseases that came from animals that humans get, was published in 2012. So let's just put that in history, okay? That is pre-COVID. So and I'm reading this now post-COVID. So there's always this like COVID thing going on in your mind about it, because there are references in many parts of this book to the next big pandemic. And you're like, but we've been through that. I've been through the next big pandemic. So I feel like very much feel like I read this book on the other side, if that makes sense. And that was really interesting. And I learned quite a bit in this book. Like, I learned so much in this book. I think that it was, for the most part, told in a very accessible way for people like me, who were liberal arts majors, who took astronomy to fulfill their science requirement in college. I read more. I probably am learning far more science now as an adult, as a middle-aged adult, than I ever learned in school, because I've been reading more of it, but also because my husband talks all the time about it. Anyway, so it was pretty accessible. There were parts where it got a little in the weeds for me in science. Now, if you were to go hear Doris at Aldi Books, or my husband just like gave me a thumbs up for some reason. If you're going to go see what Doris or Heidi said about this book, they both have more of a science background than I do. So they probably had they didn't have that issue that I did, because he got really in the weeds in science. And so there's that. So in this, you follow some diseases, some zoonotic diseases, so diseases that come from animals to humans. I know more about Ebola than I ever wanted to know. Ooh, that's a nasty one. You talk about Hendra and Ebola and a couple other ones. The two things that were really of interest to me, one was they talked about AIDS quite a bit, which makes sense. AIDS was sort of like the last big thing when this book was written. And I learned, for example, did you know that they've pretty much pinpointed when HIV came into humans. Like, they pretty much know when that happened and where. Like, they know, and it's way earlier than you think it was. But they like know basically like the town where it came from. They are able to do that with science stuff. Fascinating. And he told that was just really, really fascinating. The other thing is, oh God, basically it ends this book talking about how the next big thing might be bird flu. We're already eggless in our house. All the eggs in my town are sold out. And then I hear that, cats can get bird flu. So my cat is stuck inside. She doesn't understand. She hates me. That's okay. But yeah, and knowing that we already went through this COVID thing and now we have this bird flu thing happening. And he's like, that's probably going to be the next big thing. Like, So obviously this is for the, you got to be ready for this one. And yes. And even if you're like me and you're not a super sciencey person, you'll be fine with this. There just may be points where you're like, your eyes glaze over and whatever. But if you are a sciencey person, you would probably really like this book as well. Okay. So the next one I finished was a little tiny, I don't even think you can call it a novella. It was a short story. It's The Bookstore Keepers by Alice Hoffman. So this is the third, and I thought was going to be a trilogy, but then the day I got this, I got notification that there's a fourth one coming out. So apparently a series, but of short stories that she's done. They've been released as Amazon Kindle singles, and you can also get them on audio. About these two sisters and this bookshop they have in Maine. It's Once Upon a Time Bookshop. And this one dealt with some grief. It's very delightful. I would say start at the beginning. Like, it takes like 20 minutes to read each of these stories. So it's not a huge time investment, right? If you like Alice Hoffman, these are just kind of nice, delightful little sweet stories. I really enjoyed it. I pre-ordered the fourth one as soon as I got the notification. It was a nice little thing to read. I read it within the week of receiving it. I read it a week after it came out. Just that's when I had time to read it. So, but it was very enjoyable. Okay. Then I finished an audiobook, and I heard about this audiobook from Patrice Jones because she mentioned it on one of hers. And just on her mentioning it, I went to Audible and picked it up. And it says, let me get the whole title here. Black AF History, the Un-Whitewashed Story of America. So this is where this is not a bad thing. This is just sort of a thing. I made an incorrect assumption about this book. I had it in my mind that this would be very much like a people's history of the United States or an indigenous history of the United States. One of those, like, this is the history from this point. And I haven't read the indigenous one yet, although I do plan to, but I have read the Howard Zinn book. And that was very much meant to be read alongside your classical, I guess, or what you would get in school for U.S. history. I expected it to be kind of like that. Now, had I thought about it, the title of this book is Black AF History, and we know what AF stands for. That's not this book. This book is very quickly you figured out this is a funny book. Like, it's coming with a lot of humor and a lot of, in some ways, tongue-in-cheekness in some cases. The history. So I learned so much history in this book. And it is a case of, I knew this part of American history, and now I'm getting the other side of it. And it's that other side that I may not have known. So I will say the part I did know was all very accurate. So I have no reason to question what I didn't know in here. I think that it was well researched, and it was presented in a very, very accessible way because it's very funny. At times he has conversations with racist baby. It's a thing. Really, so yes, it's very funny when it should be, when it is appropriate for it to be funny. There are times when it is not appropriate to be funny, and it plays it straight. It's really well done. I wonder, and I was trying to figure this out. I wonder who the audience for this book is supposed to be. Is this book supposed to be for African Americans who want to learn more about their history, or is it for people like me who want to learn about it? Because I couldn't really tell who the audience was, and I felt like that there was an audience. Like, I couldn't really tell. That's not a bad thing. It did make me question things. Not question things that in the book, like question the book, but question things of how I see the world in a lot of ways. Also, this falls into that group of books I've been reading, of books that were written before the 2024 election, but I'm reading after the 2024 election. And it is chilling. It is a chilling book in that way. Like the last part of the book is chilling, given where we are now. In The Truth America, his point is, the last little part talks about the two-party system, and is it the Democrats or the Republicans who are racist, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it doesn't matter. Americans are racist. And that's true. It is true. I try very hard to, to not be racist, I guess is a way to say it. I try to be, inclusive in all this, but I also know that I was raised in a family that wasn't like that I was raised in a society that wasn't like that. I grew up in Oregon. Oregon is a very white, there's not a large African-American population in there. I want to say we're very white because there are other groups that are here as well, but there isn't a large African-American population. I think there might have been one Black student in my elementary school, and it wasn't until I got to high school that there was like more than two at a time. So you can talk, if you're in that situation, and we're not talking about my upbringing now, because that's the whole other thing, but just the school thing. If you just aren't exposed to people from different cultures and different groups, you just don't know. You can be taught until you're blue in the face in school about it, which I was not, but that's a whole other thing. You could, but until you experience, it's different, right? And then again, my family, I don't share my parents' views on a lot of things. Let's just put it that way. And some of my siblings' views. Not all of my siblings, but some of my siblings' views. I don't share those views. Let's just put it there. I did go to school in Virginia where there's a much larger African-American community. And that was a real learning experience for me. Not in a negative way. Just it's something new that I never had experienced before. But I'm still learning that history. For example, I had never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre until I was probably in my 20s or 30s, and I just happened to read a book where it was mentioned. Now, I remember when my son was in 5th grade and he was learning about it in school. So, that's good. We're getting better. But yes, this was a really eye-opening book for me, and it was challenging at times, as it should be. And it was also very funny at times, as it should be. And I would say for this book, I would recommend it if you're okay going and being challenged. There are a lot of people I would not recommend this book to because I don't think they would handle being challenged by it, if that makes sense. But I think and I personally, I'm a history person. I read history, but I read, I don't need to have history made overly accessible like I do science. Just that's what my interest is. That's what my education is. But I am all for things like this that make history really accessible, the way he used humor to make it real. I'm all for that because I think that gives it a wider audience. So there's all that. I highly recommend this book if you think you can handle it. And I did it on audio, which was fantastic. He reads it himself. And I do recommend it on audio because then you hear the conversations with Racist Baby. That's a whole thing. Finally, and I just finished this book last night, and it was a buddy read. I still need to do my final check-in. I'm not sure if Priscilla's finished it, but I did this as a buddy read with Priscilla at Evening Reader, and this is An American Marriage. I'm not going to go into too many details about it because I'm still discussing it. In fact, last night I finished it, and I messaged Priscilla and said, I can't even talk about it right now. I need to think about it. All I will say, my high-level views, is I was put through the emotional ringer with this book. Oh my gosh. I was it's a hard book in that way. It's a very good book. The characters are really well written. Not always likable. They are not always likable. But that's fine because no one is always likable. And a lot of really hard stuff happens in this book that of course people would come out with things that they have to work through, right? This ended up being a 5-star book for me because I cannot remember a book that has made me as emotionally wrung out at the end as this book has in the way that it was intended. I may have read some that it wasn't intended that way, and that's not good, but this was intended that way. So I really liked her writing. I really, really, and I know she has some other books, so I will definitely be reading more by Tayari Jones. So that is my reading week. Now it is the 28th of February as I am writing this. I have a book I'm going to read. I'm going to at least start today. Martita, I Remember You by Sandra Cisneros. This is something that Mariandria has recommended many times, and I've had it out from the library and haven't had a chance to read it. It's very short. It is possible I will finish that book today. If I finish that book today, you will hear my thoughts about it when I do my monthly wrap up. Otherwise, my next week's wrap up is just going to be from March 1st on, but we'll see. Anyway, that is my month. It's March on the Moors. We're gonna Bronte things up. I'm starting my Agnes Grey read along today. Yeah, so I'm very excited. You know, I've only been talking about it for 6 months. Like, I'm super excited about March on the Moors. So, and I have my t-shirt, and I have many more other t-shirts, and I am going to be filming my tag video right after this. So I will still be wearing this t-shirt in that tag video. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be out on Tuesday. Anyway, like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.